we listen and we don't judge. That's it. Basically, the listen and we don't judge trend, and then next thing you know, somebody say something they shouldn't have never said. So basically, and they asked what's yours for Guilty Gear, like any in the Guilty Gear series, and somebody actually said they should release new characters instead of people from the previous games. Which I looked at that and I was like, you know what? That actually makes me think because most times when you're seeing, mostly all the time that I've seen in Guilty Gear fans, when they're asking who they want in the next game, you're not hearing anybody say new characters. It's all old characters, not even guest characters, really. Like they're just talking about characters from previous games. And I'm like, why is that? Because like games like Street Fighter or Tekken, you know, like Tekken's first DLC, people got mad because they're like, why is Lydia a character in the first DLC in Tekken 8? And she was basically like one of the last characters for DLC in Tekken 7. Like, why is that the case? Why is Eddie Gordo DLC for Tekken 8? Like, he should have been in the base roster. You know, you got Clive, of course, and then Heihachi came back. Of course, people thought it was a big deal because he was dead, but it's like, it's Heihachi. If the man was alive, you should have put him in the base game, you know. So it's like people hope like the standard that these other fighting games are held to, fans just don't seem to do that. They're like, man, if you just give me our old characters in this game, like we cool. So why is that? And we'll start off with our resident Guilty Gear guy, you know, Mr. Triple G. We'll start off with MC Amazing.
Yeah, the thing about Guilty Gear is, at least this is just my hypothesis, right? My theory is like when I was coming up playing Guilty Gear, we had the same Guilty Gear for a really long time. We had the same characters for a really long time because it was like what Guilty Gear X2. I think that came out in like the early 2000s, and I think Guilty Gear Iska came out, but it was kind of like even after Iska came out, they were still releasing new versions of Guilty Gear X2, like Accent Core plus R and all that stuff. So we didn't really have like a new Guilty Gear game that wasn't that game, that wasn't exactly Guilty Gear X2 until what, 2014? Like that's a long time to be playing like with the same characters. Plus, at least from in my perspective, like because me and my brothers, we played through the story mode in Guilty Gear as X2. And the story mode, they had like different branching stories and stuff like that. You had like different endings for all the characters. You had like, I mean, one of the things I used to wonder about, I'm like, man, did like Chip did he win the election? Like, did he get to be president? Like, and I mean, yeah, he did. I think didn't he? I think he won the election in what's called in Xrd. I think like in like Revelator and whatnot. Like he actually won the election, which was I thought was pretty cool. Um, but then you have like characters like that you haven't seen in a while, like Zappa. You haven't seen him in a while. Haven't seen I mean, people are saying I think like Venom will probably be coming pretty soon. Like looking forward to seeing Venom again. Like all these really cool characters that people have had a lot of time with, like a really long time to play as. So when you don't have them in like this in like the new games, because like even they brought back Venom in like what was it like Xrd, Revelator, and all of that. You had Anji. So not having them in Strive, I could see how much of a shock that would be because these characters have been in the game, like whether through like DLC or base roster for like 20 years. Like I've been playing with Venom for like 20 years. You're playing with Johnny for like 20 years. So it's just like for them not to have these characters in the game, like base roster, or they like like we want to see these characters that we've grown attached to for like the past like couple games, at least in my mind, because these are like I'm still waiting for them to put Zappa back in the game, to be honest with you. Like I know that he was kind of a controversial character to have in the game because by the time that we were done with Guilty Gears X2, like we're like in Accent Core plus R, like he was really strong, really strong, a really strong character. So I could understand like the trepidation in bringing him back, especially in that form. But I'm looking forward to seeing him again. So I mean, I think that's kind of not exactly the one reason. I think there are a bunch of reasons, but that would be one of the reasons that that comes to my mind when I think of like why we're constantly asking for older characters.
On you, Devin.
So basically, my opinion on this is I feel like Guilty Gear has been one of like those super like eccentric, unique fighting games, like which it was typically anime games that kind of fall into that realm. I remember playing Guilty Gear X2 back on PS2. That was my first. I didn't even realize that it had a Guilty Gear on a PS1. I didn't even know that that was a thing. And I played it and I was like, man, this roster of characters is like so unique. Like it's like some of the most unique characters I've ever seen. Some crazy characters. I mean, Zappa is like etched in my mind as one of the wildest characters I've seen in a fighting game. Um, and so I think that it's like when you look at games like Street Fighter and Tekken, there's been so many renditions of these games. I think also Guilty Gear has had like less, I believe, less versions than most other fighting games. Yeah, like Guilty Gear, the OG Guilty Gear X, 2. You had like other versions of that one. Then you had like Guilty Gear XR, Revelator, and now Strive. You had games like a lot of older characters have been back so many times, and like Street Fighter, we've seen Sagat so many times. We've seen well, it's kind of weird. He was a DLC in 5. We've seen all these characters. Most characters have come back. Street Fighter series, there's not really many characters that's left that haven't come back. You've had like who's not been in the game. Like we haven't seen Remy. We haven't seen like some of the Third Strike characters, Necro. Who else?
Dawn.
Yeah. So that there's a handful of characters that have not been in a Street Fighter game since they came out in their original game, like in a while. But most characters have come back in some form or fashion. Guilty Gear, I think, has just never really done that. And there's a lot of characters that's so unique that people love and hold on to so much. Like Zappa, I keep hearing all the time that people want Zappa back. He hadn't been in the game since what, X2?
Yeah, since Plus R. Yep.
Yeah, so it's like he hadn't been in the game since like PlayStation 2 era. So it's like when you got a character like that, it's like they like give us him back, you know. I would like to see new characters in Guilty Gear because I mean they make such unique characters, like I stated before. Like I would like to see what they can do with new characters. But I just think people just have such a love for some of these and a fondness for some of these older characters, and they want to see them come back. Because when you got a character that ain't been back for like 20 years, it's like, all right, at some point, bring the character back. Like
Right.
once we brought all our old characters back, and it's not like Guilty Gear has had a crazy roster. Well, I guess if you add like the new characters from XR, maybe now there's somewhat of a big roster. But over the years, it's like the game was like had a crazy roster of like 40 characters in the game. People probably like, hey, just bring all the old characters back first. I think we just got Dizzy back, I believe, and Strive. What's Tempest is back. Yeah, Elfeld, Bridges back. So it's like they might as well bring back Zappa. You had Cliff, Abba, Justice. Those are like a few that I think. Robo Kai. Are those it? Are those the only other characters that haven't been back in games that I can think of from the older games?
Yeah, because I don't know if they did that. Have they put Venom in the game yet? I mean, like, because I think he's like kind of slated.
Venom came back in XR, I believe, right? Or Revelator. Yeah, so he's been back in a recent game, but like characters like Cliff, Abba, and Justice, those characters haven't been in games for a while now. So and Zappa. So I think those are like the 4 that still left. So I think just people just love those characters so much. It's like, hey, give us all the older characters first, and then you can make something new. That's what I feel.
Yeah, because I mean, like when you think about it, it's like how many? There's not that many characters that haven't been. Like when you put it that way, like you might as well just put them in because there are only like 4 or 5 people left, really.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question. So you got Guilty Gear X and Guilty Gear Xer. Like the different iterations of like Guilty Gear X, like Reload / Accent Core Plus. Were they adding different characters for like every iteration of the Zex game, or was it like basically the same characters that you had in Zex or the original Zex?
Basically, they were the same characters except for like I don't think Abba was not in the game initially. I don't think she was like because it was like Kai, Saul, Axel Lowe, Dizzy, Johnny, Bridget. I think some of those characters were actually like they were new characters to the Guilty Gear X2, right? So characters like Bridget, Slayer, Ino, and Zappa, I think, were all new characters for that game for Zex 2. I don't think they had been in the game before then. So they were all new to that game. So then you had like all the old people for all the old characters from like Potemkin and Chip, Anji, Baiken, and all them. Like it was, Dizzy, Testament, who was like I think a boss character in one of the games before that actually. Um, and then you have like what Justice and Cliff, who are like secret characters who were like really kind of crazy in their own right, actually. Yeah, there was quite a few, then you have like what's like RoboKai, like Mr. Game and Lift mentioned earlier, like RoboKai. And then I remember they had RoboKai Mark II and Iska, I think. And then like for
The
a good
dog, didn't he have
while,
a dog, some dog character in one game? Like it was some very esoteric. I like never seen the character before.
you talking about Leopoldon or whatever, like in
Maybe.
Iska, like with it, like it's inside of that really crazy looking white dude. That was like a really monstrous, really weird, monstrous looking character. I don't know where the idea for that character came from, but that thing, like that is nightmare fuel for sure
Maybe
in my
that's what that
mind.
was from. I remember seeing some crazy looking character.
Yeah, and then like you have like Faust. I mean, who's like technically like he's technically he's not a new character like in like the traditional sense because like he's Doctor Baldhead, but he's just wearing a bag on his head basically, and try to like and all that. So it's yeah, I don't really think I think the only real character they really added later on was like ABBA, if I remember. If like feel free to correct me in the comments, I guess, but I feel like that was the only character that they really added to the roster over the years, I think, as far as I remember. Because
So
like
basically, Guilty Gear is kind of like a series where, like, let's just say a character release in X, and then they won't be in like the other future games that coming in is like, because I think I said Zappa was last and plus R, and then if you look at the timeline, plus R was basically 2012. So basically, it's finna been 10 years since that character's been in the game, and he's been a favorite of people. So it seems like they just do their characters to where it's like a scarcity. It's like you'll get a character beloved, and then next thing you know, he's not here for a while. Then I can see like how people could be like, look, like you released a character from 20 years ago that I think was fire. Like, why don't you bring him back instead of talking about bringing in, whoever from whoeverville?
Yeah.
So I can get that because really I've never really looked at the Guilty Gear timeline, but when you look at the timeline, it's really spaced out. Like from the time between Zex and basically Exert was 12 years.
Yeah.
And then basically from Exert to Guilty Gear Strive was basically like 7 years. So they really spaced their games out. So it's like if you did have a character that you liked, it's like, yeah, like that character could be ancient history by the time like it's like, okay, we're here in Strive, and it's like, bro, like we're in the 2020s. I possibly hadn't played my character, like Devin said, since the PS2 era. Like, can we please, like, can you please bring them back? So I really never looked at the timeline. So that makes sense why you wouldn't hear them clamoring for like new characters because what's the guy's name? The vampire guy that just came out for Guilty Gear.
Slayer.
Yeah.
Slayer?
People was asking for him, and when he got announced, people went crazy. So I was like,
Yeah.
man, they went crazy. Like, you don't see people go crazy like this for guest characters in games. Like, it was like the Guilty Gear scene was really just like, oh my goodness, like this like Christmas. Like,
Yeah.
like, so, it always like struck me as just like, why is it like with the like it's like they really just don't care for like any new characters, like they only want the old ones back. And it makes sense when you look at the timeline, like from Guilty Gear X was all the way, Guilty Gear X was 2002, then you get Guilty Gear X Guilty Gear X was 2000, then you get Guilty Gear X in 2002. Then they keep releasing Guilty Gear X iterations until 2012. So 10 years of basically the same game.
Yeah.
So that's crazy.
It was like basically in place of doing patches, basically like you just released a new game with updated stuff.
Yeah, they really got influenced by Street Fighter 2.
It's kind of like I was saying with me with Street Fighter 5, like Fong and G like kept me playing the game. There's some people that there might be one character in that game you started playing like, and that was what like I'm playing this game because of this character. I like this character,
Right.
and if they're not in the game, you're like, I just don't want to. There's nobody else I have a desire to play. So until they bring my character back, so like that's a thing. Like it's wild. I mean, I would like to try the other new characters, but some people just like, hey, that character's it, and I don't want to play nobody else. If they ain't in the game, I'm not playing it. So I can see that because we even had different versions of we had like a second version of Soul Bad Guy, didn't we? Like
we did.
Order
Holy
Soul.
Order Saul.
Yeah,
Holy Order Saul.